On today's episode of the Locked On Knicks podcast, the Knicks can finally get some breathing room from the Atlanta Hawks by changing their rotation.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are locked on to the New York Knicks. My name is Gavin Schall, and today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. On today's show, I am hosted by my Locked On colleague, Wes Goldberg, over at the RealGM Radio show to put a bow on Game 2 and talk about some adjustments going into Game 3. How can the Knicks close better? How concerned should we be about Jonathan Kuminga potentially playing more for the Atlanta Hawks? And how the Knicks blew Game 2 and why new rotations are critical for the Knicks to get some breathing room and win this series. We'll talk about it all in just a sec with Wes.
All right, Gavin Schall is here. Really excited. He covers the Knicks over at Locked On Knicks. Does a great job over there. We're talking the morning after the Hawks tied up the series 1-1. Gavin, I thought the Knicks had this one. But the Hawks just kept hanging in there. And then CJ McCollum takes over in the fourth quarter. You cut to the final 2 minutes. CJ McCollum, 3 straight shots, including a fading away jumper from the corner that reminded me of something like Kawhi Leonard would make with 30 seconds left. Jalen Brunson gets stripped by Nickeil Alexander-Walker when he tries to retake the lead. That goes to a Jalen Johnson dunk on the other end. And just like that, game's over. Series is tied going back to Atlanta. Before I ask you about the rest of this series, to me, it feels like the Knicks have been clearly the better team, and it just feels like they have such a hard time pulling away. They even led by 14, I think it was in the third quarter of Game 2, but the Hawks just get back in there. Both games, it just feels like the Knicks have been better, but just have a hard time creating separation from Atlanta. Why do you think that is?
I think in this game, it was pretty clear that the starters, especially in the first quarter, were pretty dominant. Mike Brown started doing something earlier in the month of April that he previously had not done the entire season, and that was play consistent lineups without either Karl-Anthony Towns or Jalen Brunson. If I'm remembering correctly, they were like -8 in total for this particular game, and it seems like an awful decision against this Hawks team in particular, especially the first iteration that he played, which was Jordan Clarkson, Deuce McBride, Landry Shamet, OG Anunoby, Mitchell Robinson. You're playing a lineup without a true point guard against a defense that's been the second best in the NBA since February 22nd. You are kind of feeding into what I think, I'm taking this from my co-host XJ, shout out, the only way the Hawks can beat you, which is if you commit a bunch of turnovers, right? Because the Knicks, when Dyson Daniels is on the floor, they have extremely successfully stifled the Hawks half-court offense, playing that ghost coverage on Daniels. Karl-Anthony Towns, and to a lesser extent, OG Anunoby, when he's gotten a chance, have both been extremely successful, like basically playing free safety. Like the Knicks have gotten to defend in the half-court 5-on-4 for huge chunks of this series, and in turn, they've dominated this series, right? Like that makes things really, really easy. But then when you have that bench lineup in and they're throwing the basketball all over the court because they're not playing with a point guard out there, it leads to a lot of easy offense going the other way. Mike Brown made an adjustment in the second half, pivoted to Jose Alvarado with that second unit, which certainly helped a little bit, but I don't think any of it helps as much as just playing Karl-Anthony Towns with 4 shooters, which has been the typical bench alignment the last 2 years. It's one that's been extremely successful for the Knicks the last 2 years. And in fact, generally, Wes, you know this, over the last 2 years, it has not been the Knicks starters who've consistently been average in general, terrible against great teams that have carried them. It has been dominating the bench minutes. And because of the shift from Mike Brown, that hasn't really happened. And to be clear, the blame isn't totally on the bench. Guys like the starters had, I think, a 9-point lead, 8-point lead when they checked back in with like 6 minutes to go. Ideally, you would hold on to that. Ideally, you would win Game 2. But the reason the Knicks couldn't separate is because that bench unit really, really struggled.
That's sort of what I was coming to, I kind of keep going back to as well. Very curious that, okay, so Mike Brown runs the non-Brunson, non-Cat minutes in the first half, and they let the Hawks back into the game. And you're like, well, that was a disaster. Surely he wouldn't do it again in the second half. And surely if he did do it in the second half, it would never be in the fourth quarter of a really important playoff game. And that's exactly what happened. I think Mike Brown has done a really good job this year for the Knicks overall. The questions about what you do with the starting lineup are fair. That might be more of a roster construction issue than a Mike Brown issue. It just does feel like maybe there's no right answers. They tried to improve the bench at the trade deadline. I think they did succeed in that. To what level we can debate it, I suppose. But you need I understand the thought of, well, if our starting lineup is only average, well, what's the way that we can kind of juice those minutes with our starters on the court is make sure that our two best starters are on the court at the same time as much as possible. And so you tie Brunson and Cat's minutes together. The flip side of that, obviously, is that when they're off the floor, they're both off the floor. And there was just, I don't know what the plan was. I guess maybe 5 years ago it could have been Jordan Clarkson running pick and roll with Mitchell Robinson. That just doesn't seem to be Clarkson's game anymore. And frankly, it's never really Robinson's offensive game. He's more of put the ball up there and let me go get the offensive rebound kind of thing. So it just doesn't quite work, even if I kind of see the outlines of what the plan is with it. And credit to Atlanta's defense. They were dialed in. They were ready for it. I think their defense has been really good on balance for this series. But what do you do if you go forward? Because the gambit on, okay, let's just win these starting minutes as much as possible. The Knicks starters are only a +8 in this series so far, and their bench is obviously a negative right now. That's a tough thing to figure out if you're Mike Brown.
Yeah, I mean, I'll again reference my co-host. He does another podcast called The Hot Hand Theory, and they were previewing this series, and they said on it, which I completely agree with, if the Knicks starters can be like a net zero, right, like net neutral throughout the playoffs, the Knicks should win a championship. And I agree with that because on the year coming into this postseason, the starters were in the aggregate, I think minus. I can't remember going into the last few games of the season improved because they had a good final few games. They were like minus 21 net rating on the year against top 10 teams, right? It was consistently basically any non-starter lineup that the Knicks played excelled against the best teams on earth, right? Like the starters, we have a 2-year sample size of them not working really well together. I would have like some slight pushback on like there's no answers on the roster, like the combo over like a pretty huge sample size at this point of Jalen Brunson, Deuce McBride, and Karl Anthony Towns like +12 over the last 2 years. Like if you want to argue like the defense isn't good enough with those two, like it has been below average in the playoffs. It just they score every time basically when they have those three on the floor. So we were hoping to see more of that in the regular season. Partially because Mike Brown didn't really want to deviate too much from what Tom Thibodeau did. We didn't see a ton of that. That being said, to your point, like if the start and to my point, if the starters are +8 over 2 games, to me, that is a screaming success relative to what they've done against great teams over the last 2 years. It's just making sure you're also propping up those bench units. And I would take less minutes from the starters and certainly like an opportunity to get Karl Anthony Towns around 4 shooters. The Knicks played 5 out for just a minute 30 in this game, and they were successful in that 90 seconds. It doesn't mean anything, but I would like to see that alignment against the Hawks because, again, we have a super large sample size over 2 years. That Cat plus 4 shooters, and it almost doesn't really matter who the 4 shooters are, is going to work really well. It gives you, like the Knicks, especially like in crunch time situations, really, really, really struggled to feature Cat. Atlanta did something smart, and they went away from the alignment that was playing into the Knicks' favor, and I think is the element that is allowing the starting lineup to work, which is a center on Karl Anthony Towns. I don't want to be overconfident in this, but I saw the number last night. I don't have it in front of me, but for this series, when the Hawks put a center on Cat, I believe the Knicks' offensive rating is something like 134. When it's anyone but a center, it's like 66, which is just insane. Shout out to like David Lee for that number. But basically, like if you force the Hawks into alignments where their big has to be on Cat, like the Knicks cook and the Hawks don't have a lot of answers for it. And you're trying to dictate that lineup as much as possible. And with shooting around Cat, it becomes very, very hard to put a non-center on him. That being said, it's also imperative if you are going to close with that starting lineup and the Hawks say, great, we're putting Jonathan Kuminga on him. Like, dude, you still have to run action through Cat. Like, Jonathan Kuminga is strong and athletic and is a better answer than Capella. But even if they switch that, like, it's not a great answer for Cat. Like, they don't really have someone on their roster who should be able to guard this guy. So just keep running the 2-man action, keep running the pick and roll, pick and pop. You have nominally, the whole premise was you're getting 2 of the 15 best offensive players on planet Earth. Use them together regardless of who the defenders are.
A lot of thoughts on how they're guarding Cat that I want to get into with you. But before I do that, did you just shout out the former power forward David Lee? Is there another David Lee?
No, there's a Hawks beat writer named David Lee.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be
different.
I mean, he's a Knicks legend, man. Childhood hero of yours
Right.
truly. So I will always shout out NBA David Lee, but this is not NBA David Lee.
I love the idea of doing a podcast with you while as we're just talking, we're just shouting out our childhood favorite NBA players. So if
Al Harrington.
If you at any point during the next few minutes, feel free to just shout out your favorite.
Copeland at something.
Mario Chalmers.
There we go. Rio.
There we go.
Yeah. All right, guys, we'll be back with Wes in just a sec. We are going to get into just how threatened the Knicks should be by Jonathan Kuminga all of a sudden becoming a major factor in this series. But first, we got to tell you about our friends over at Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill somehow still sitting open when the pressure's on and you need the right hire. This is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, locations. You're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching, more time interviewing candidates. You check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching, more time actually interviewing candidates. You check all your boxes, less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And we also want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every match is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get on the action. Here's what I like about it. You can bet just $5 and get 250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, the extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. I told you guys each of the first two games, the line I would take was the under. I thought this was going to be a defensively focused series, and I was right in both of the first two games. It's a point lower in this one, 216.5. I'm going to keep it rolling, man. I've been hot on that. Just keep taking the under. I think these games are going to be ugly. I think they're going to be defensive battles for the New York Knicks unless they make the lineup adjustments we talk about and are going to continue to talk about. But for now, we want to remind you to head over to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. And if you want to get Locked On Knicks ad-free, you can do so by joining the Everydayer Club. It also features members-only Discord access. All you have to do is join at lockedonKnicks.supercast.com.
Let's talk about the Cat, the coverage on Cat, because I think it's a fascinating part of the series. It's the biggest and most obvious sort of chess match part of what's going on right now. I thought, look, so we saw Quinn Snyder do this in the regular season in these matchups. He would put Onyeka Okongwu on Cat. And it was a talking point because we all sort of agreed as NBA media that smart coaches don't do that. The smart NBA coaches put a wing on Cat, and then they put their center on Josh Hart, and then you go to work. And we also all agree that Quinn Snyder is a really smart coach. So the fact that the smart coach wasn't doing the smart coach thing, we're all like, well, what's going on here? And, you know, you look at Atlanta's roster and like, well, do they really have a natural coverage guy that's not Onyeka Okongwu for Cat? Like, do they really want to put that on Jalen Johnson when he's tasked with so much to do so much on the offensive end? And I get it. I was a little curious. I bet that going into game one, I was like, I think he's just going to do it right away. I think he's going to put Jalen Johnson or Dyson Daniels on Cat right away. I think the regular season he might have been like sandbagging a little bit. And then nope, played it straight up in game one. Should have known better. Like, at least go out there, see what it is, kind of get your bearings of the series, and then adjust from there, which is, by the way, another thing that smart coaches do. But then we see it in game two. So saw it a little bit at the end of game one, but really at game two, right off the bat, Dyson Daniels on Cat, Okongwu's on Josh Hart. And then he goes back to that Okongwu look on the next series of substitutions. Both of them are back in the game. Okongwu's back on Cat. And I'm just like, all right, so now we're doing the show him the different looks thing on Cat. Like, I think Cat's a phenomenal player, obviously. I don't know that he's a different looks kind of player. I don't know he's that Jokic level where you can't show him one look. You got to show him a lot of different looks.
Sure, yeah.
But some of it also was just based on the rotation and things like that, so I get it. But going back down the stretch in this game, it was Jonathan Kuminga coming off the bench and guarding Cat, and I thought that was a fascinating adjustment by Quinn Snyder, and frankly, a genius one. Kuminga is a lot of things, and he's not a lot of things. One thing he is big, strong, and a pretty damn good one-on-one defender, especially against bigger guys. Against smaller guys, he can have trouble corralling them a little bit on the perimeter. Against bigger guys, he does a really nice job guarding up. And I thought Kuminga was maybe McCollum's going to get all the headlines for all the shots that he made, and deservedly so. Kuminga was as much of a difference maker to me. 19 points off the bench, and then his defense on Cat in game 2. And I guess that's what we're going to see going forward. I guess, like, what is the Knicks' adjustment to it? Because I really thought Cat has been largely very good in this series. It's just sort of what they do around that, I guess, is the adjustment that they have to make.
No, I think it's brilliant from Atlanta. And I said on our podcast last night, I'd be surprised, maybe barring like a do or die game for Atlanta, for them to actually do this. I would start Jonathan Kuminga over Dyson Daniels, because even though Kuminga is not really like a shooter, you take away that ghost coverage element, right? Like the Knicks, I would assume maybe they would start doing this over enough minutes, but they would not give him the Daniels treatment where you're playing 10 feet off him on offense. And even more so than the Cat coverage, I think that completely changes things for Atlanta. His athleticism was, I think, shocking is the only word I can use for it to the Knicks. And the Knicks have a good bench unit, but a big weakness of this team and a big issue at times with the starting lineup is just the roster balance, where you're essentially playing your 3 playable wings. Like if you want to call Landry Shamet a wing, sure, but he's like 6'5" and he probably weighs as much as you and me, Wes. Like it's not, they don't have like that monster athlete off. I do wonder if this continued, if the Knicks would dust off Jeremy Sohan and try him in that matchup, and he would nominally, like if you're going to throw a guy out there for some bench minutes and you're not going to care about shooting, like he's someone I'd be like, all right, that's probably a good answer to Kuminga. But like when Kuminga gets a head start, the Knicks have, again, good defenders, but not a lot of guys that can stop him with a head of steam. So offensively, like his athleticism, I think, is an issue for this team. Jalen Brunson, weirdly enough, though he got toasted in the fourth quarter through the first 2, I think drew 2 different offensive fouls on Kuminga. He was weirdly like the right answer for the Knicks, though. I cannot imagine that is good for Jalen Brunson feeling his best at the end of his game, having Jonathan Kuminga like run him over 2 or 3 different times. Offensively, I'm almost procrastinating the answer because I don't have a great one to it. Like I think to your point, like he is just a far better answer. And obviously like the core premise of putting Kuminga there versus Okongwu there is it allows you to like comfortably switch that Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns 2-man action. But I'll say again, like I don't think like whether it's Kuminga or like if you get that switch, it's Dyson Daniels, or you can even like have Cat screen for like whoever CJ McCollum's guarding. Like you can run pick and roll or pick and pop actions. Like it doesn't have to just be through Jalen Brunson. Him and Mikal Bridges all year long have had a lot of success in 2-man actions. When Deuce McBride's in the game, him and Cat have great chemistry. OG Anunoby and Cat have successfully run pick and roll. Like you can diversify to get the right guy, and you can match up Hunt with Cat the same exact way you match up Hunt with Jalen Brunson. So I think the Knicks need to do a little bit more of that, but it kind of gets to like my core fear and the core issue with these Knicks and why the starting lineup, I think, has struggled. And it's that I don't think they have a clear-cut identity. And for a team full of like hyper-intelligent basketball players, for whatever reason, and like I have some theories that probably we don't need to get into on this podcast, they do not play particularly well as a 5-some. And when you guard them straight up, you make it easy because Brunson and Cat have developed a legitimate chemistry and have developed legitimate counters in the 2-man game. But if you throw just a slight wrinkle in, it feels like everyone just sort of throws their hands up in the air and says, all right, I guess it's time for Jalen Brunson ISO ball. All right, the big is on Josh Hart. Josh, you're in the action every time, setting a screen. Right. And this Hawks defense that is doing a great job mixing up a bunch of different coverages down the stretch of this game. And the Knicks are throwing one pitch every time. And a great defense is going to figure out how to hit that pitch successfully. And also, like, Jalen can do a much better job in his decision-making, but I think the Knicks just make it too easy on him.
And the pitch isn't even their best pitch because they're like, well, if you're going to take our fastball away, we'll just throw this knuckleball that we're not very good at.
Yeah.
It's like, what? No, just keep throwing the fastball sometimes. Mm-hmm. You're exactly right. To me, my big takeaway from these 2 games is, and by the way, the Knicks season overall, to your point, has been as soon as teams put the wing on Cat, they don't even test it. They're immediately like, well, guess we can't run our pick and roll. This is the best pick and roll thing.
You beat us, guys. Yeah. It's all over. We can't do anything. Yeah.
And they're like, well, we're so smart. Now we're going to put Josh Hart in the action. He's going to be our guy, and we're going to put him on the short roll. And he's going to kick out the Cat. And teams are like, yeah, we saw that coming because that's what you've been doing for the last year and a half. Like, we know that this is what you're going to do. And so now defenses have counters to that as well. They largely just stay home on New York shooters, including Cat, who's basically now essentially just a 7-foot shooter in these alignments.
Yeah.
They never will punish those matchups when Cat has a small on him. I know I don't need to sound like Charles Barkley and Shaq right now, but it's like, dude, take him into the post like once. And,
yeah, I mean, it literally happened once, and he got a defensive foul, and then they were like, nope, never again.
Yeah, glad that worked.
All right, guys, we'll be back with Wes one final time to talk about how the Knicks can close games in a better fashion. But first, we've got to tell you about our good friends over at Gametime. There's nothing like playoff basketball live, the intensity of the crowd, the rivalries. It's a completely different experience when you are in the building. The NBA playoffs are where unforgettable moments happen, and being there in person just hits different. Gametime makes it incredibly easy to find tickets, even for those hard-to-get-to playoff games in just a few taps. And with the Gametime guarantee, you know you are 100% authentic. You know you're getting 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. Gametime makes it easy to find great seats in just a couple minutes. My favorite part is the price you see is the price you pay. I've mentioned this before, but nothing frustrates me like getting to the end of a ticket buying process and the price jumps potentially as much as a few $100s. And with Gametime, fees are included, so there's no surprises at checkout. The seat view feature is a game changer as well. You can actually see what your seat will look like before you go ahead and buy those tickets. And the zone deals are great if you're trying to save. You pick the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you still get a great deal. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today.
That to me is the most frustrating part about watching the Knicks is you don't have to go away from it so quickly. Test it. And specifically with this Kuminga matchup, he is very happy to get called for a foul. Jonathan Kuminga is, especially when he's guarding a smaller player. He will reach and he will get called for fouls. And if he's on Cat, my response as the Knicks would be, all right, bet. We're going to attack you now. We know that you could switch it and that's good for you. Okay. Switch Kuminga on to Brunson. Let's see what's up. Brunson's one of the best 10 players in the league. There's nobody in the league who, I might even include Shea in this. I don't know that there's anybody in the league that if I need to go score a bucket, I want the ball in their hands more than Jalen Brunson. Like his footwork is so sublime. The way that he gets people to just bait on everything. You're telling me you can't bait Jonathan Kuminga, who the Warriors gave away, into committing a foul? Like, come on. What are we doing here? It's not like Kawhi got switched onto you. That to me is the most frustrating part about watching it. I know I'm kind of going, I'm on a soapbox a little bit here, but it's like you're the best pick and roll combo in the league, right? Or you're one of them.
Yeah.
Go be it. Go show them. Don't let Jonathan Kuminga or whatever wing on other random team just grind your gears to a halt here. You don't see, for instance, Jokic and Murray just being like, oh,
no, that's
they gave us a weird matchup. Guess we got to get away from that two-man game. We're just going to throw it to Aaron Gordon and hope that he does something. No, they just keep running it. They prove that they're better than you. And at some point, the Knicks need to prove that they're better than them.
100% agree. Your Jalen Brunson comment was really nice, and it's a great olive branch from Heat Nation to Knicks Nation. We appreciate it, but I totally agree. I mean, on a per-possession basis over 2 years, I think it is literally the best two-man combo in the NBA, and like, we've seen, I mean, it has really been a last 2 weeks of the regular season thing that Jalen and Cat are running it consistently. And to your point, that feels like, it feels a little bit like a conscious decision of like, all right, it's now or never. Like if we're going to achieve, if those two are going to achieve their potential as a duo, if this current group is not going to be smashed into little tiny pieces and just broken up this summer, like they had to figure that out. And it was a bit of that, but it's mostly that teams are guarding them straight up. And like Mike Brown, like Tom Thibodeau form one, like there's still the easiest solution to me, which I suggested earlier, is like it, and this isn't even ideal. Like the Knicks best lineups are actually Deuce McBride in for Mikal Bridges, not Josh Hart. But if you just put Deuce McBride in for Josh Hart, like unless the Hawks go with five smaller guys, which I think they did for points down the stretch of this game, like I don't really know what your solution is there, because you're probably not like playing ghost coverage on Deuce McBride, and maybe it's OG Anunoby, but if you're going to live with OG taking wide open threes, like I actually think that is great offense for the New York Knicks. Like he's a very good 3-point shooter. Like if you put out 5 shooter alignments, it challenges the Hawks a lot more. And even if they go 5 small, at least the floor is stretched enough that it does almost truly become 2-on-2 for Jalen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns. And to your point, there shouldn't be 2 defenders on earth that can have success against that. So I think there are tactical adjustments, and I think there are lineup adjustments that make this a lot easier. It's just that Mike Brown, for whatever reason, like Tom Thibodeau, like I don't know if there could be some political element to this that's under the table. Like he has not wanted to go away from that starting 5, and there has just been like a collective I don't know if it's lack of intent or lack of synergy, because with any other combination, if you take one of those guys out, it clicks beautifully. But those five, there's something to the idea that they just kind of all want to do the same thing and all want to get to the same spots on the floor. Like against great defenses, we just have such a large sample size that it doesn't work.
And teams are playing off of OG Anunoby. That's not new. Defenses are starting to just be like, all right, Mikal Bridges, well, show us that you're going to hit these threes before we really start closing out hard on you too. And the spacing just isn't what you think it would be when you look at the names of the players.
Great point.
And by the way, I should mention this. Maybe we might just be talking about the Knicks being up 2-0 and in total control of the series if Mikal Bridges just had a pulse in this series so far, which, fun fact, he's part of those bench units when Brunson and Cat are off the floor. He's a starter. He could do stuff. Bridges, you're allowed to take control at any point if you want to. Just FYI, they traded 4.5 first-round picks for you. You can do this at any point. Anyway, I want to be fair to Mike Brown, though, in a little bit, because you mentioned Tom Thibodeau, and there's definitely like a little bit of a, well, Tibbs did this, so we can't fully go this because he got fired for this. And so maybe there's an overcorrection in terms of, well, Tibbs was so just, it was Towns and Brunson or bust, and it was our starters playing a lot of minutes or bust. And Brown, I understand why Brown would come in and be like, well, we got to diversify the offense. We got to do all these things. And like I said, largely, I think Mike Brown has done a really good job this year. But you get to a point where you're doing it too much, where you're diversifying sometimes just for the sake of diversifying without the real plan there. And to me, it's just, that's why you go into the, well, they're going to run this coverage, so let's do something different. Look at us. We're so diverse. We can run Josh Hart on the short roll. We could throw it to OG and let him create from the corner or whatever it is going to be. And like sometimes it's a too much overcorrection, right? Is overcorrection. It's not a correction. It's an overcorrection.
Yeah.
And it feels like that's a lot of what's going on. Do it though. Do it quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3. But in the fourth quarter, just run the best stuff, right? Like that's really what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and their organized offense has done great on a points per possession basis. And Mike Brown, to your point, like I think this is not that Tom Thibodeau would like occasionally call like the exact right play, but Mike Brown has been a really good play caller. And I thought even in the first game, there were times where like the two-man game got mucked up a little bit, and he said, you know what, we're going to pivot off this, and we're going to run the two-man game, but simultaneously we're going to run a split action with OG Anunoby, and like Cat hit him for a dunk. Like the Knicks did such a great job in that first game, like weaponizing Cat as a passer up top, and I think the loss of that was just partially the Hawks making really good adjustments and being a great defense, but like they're down the stretch, like you are still allowed to call plays, and so often we see teams go away from that. And the Knicks look like they've had, like I'm talking like the sky is falling. They've been on a net rating basis, they've been the best fourth quarter team in the entirety of the play-by-play era. Not this season, like in the history of the play-by-play era, they've been the best fourth quarter team. That stat is noisy because some very good teams are blowing teams out, so they don't actually have to play in the fourth quarter. But point being, like they found success in fourth quarters. They found success in crunch time. So I don't want to overly raise the alarm. Jalen Brunson, like last night, also just happened to not, second game in a row, frankly, like he couldn't make a shot down the stretch outside the 1-3 when he's typically, to your point, like the ultimate guy you want with his hands on the basketball in the closing minutes of the game. I think we're just both kind of saying the same thing, that like you are allowed to have stylistic diversity at the end of games. And if you're only doing one thing against a great defense, that one thing is going to be extremely difficult to accomplish.
Yeah, I'm with you. The sky's not falling here. It's weird. It's the same feeling with the Knicks. It's all sort of distilled into these first two games where it feels like you should be better. You're not. You're still in control. When we kind of look at everything, when we talk this out, it's like, okay, we still feel like the Knicks are probably going to win this series, right? I don't know that you've changed your mind on that. So why can't you be better? And Matt Moore said this to me on Locked On NBA yesterday, and I thought it was a really good point. It says, the Knicks are not going to wow you. They're just going to win games. And I think if I just settle into that as my expectation, then maybe that's going to be okay. But I do kind of want to be wowed every once in a while. And I want it to feel like this Knicks team is a serious title contender. And there are times where it does, and then there's fourth quarters like yesterday. But maybe then CJ McCollum hit some amazing shots. We're probably not giving him enough credit. Like maybe we're just a CJ McCollum hot hand and Kuminga's 19 points off the bench away from the Knicks being in total control of the series. Again, they were up 14 points in the third quarter.
Yeah, I wrote in my notes through three quarters like that. Not in the sense that like I still didn't love the bench only lineups, but Mike Brown had this team ready to play in a way, like for all the talk, like they're always, people would always circulate the quote with Tom Thibodeau, like we've never been more prepared. And I was like, no, this is the definition of that, in that like 1 through 10, 1 through 11, I don't know if I've seen a Knicks team like it was. I'll shout out your Heat. It was a little Heatish, like where every guy is like living and dying with every possession. Like I thought there were flaws. I thought there were mental mistakes, but they were playing so exceptionally hard. And for a team that has kind of like, it's been an open secret that they've had locker room fractures the last 2 years. Like it feels like he's gotten them to buy in and trust each other at the right time. And you just have to combine that with correct tactical decisions. But he's gotten buy-in. They're competing incredibly hard. Like there were mistakes down the stretch, like particularly like Jalen, who had been playing really great defense in this series. I thought up until the fourth quarter, like he drew 3 different offensive fouls in this game. He goes getting cooked in the fourth quarter. Mikal Bridges, they were openly targeting Mikal Bridges because he's not a good screen navigator at this point in his career. Mitchell Robinson repeatedly was like a little bit too high up on the level. And like when he was in and when he was guarding a 5, the Hawks were getting dunk after dunk after dunk. Like there's stuff to clean up, but I think the effort's there. I think the focus is there. I think the intent offensively to play the right way and to move the ball has been great by and large. They need a little bit more from a few guys, and they need to not like Deuce McBride is coming off a sports hernia. Like give him some help against a great defense. Give him Jalen Brunson to play off of. Give him Karl Anthony Towns to play off of. Landry Shamet's had a great season for you. He should not be like creating offense off the dribble against this defense. Like give those guys a break by having Cat in there who's human spacing, right? You plug him in, even when he's having a terrible night, he creates room for every single guy on the floor. Give those guys a break, and I think you'll start to see the bench units that have succeeded for years and years and years for the Knicks really start to shine.
Gavin Schall, you do great work over at Locked On Knicks. You and your co-host XJ, both of you guys are awesome on the Knicks. I encourage everybody listening to go ahead and follow them over at Locked On Knicks for more coverage and in detail, even greater than what we hit here over on that podcast. Thanks so much, Gavin. It's been fun.
Thanks so much, Wes.